my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. Let's sing it again. There's beauty in my brokenness. I got your love instead of me. There's freedom. There's freedom though you captured me. I got joy instead of more. It sounded good. Sing it out. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, in my soul, deep in my soul. Oh Lord, you give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. Well, I've never been so free, never been so free, caught in your love for me. Never been more secure, knowing your heart, Lord. I've never been so free, caught in your love for me. I've never been more secure, knowing your. Never been so free, never been so free, caught in your love for me. I've never been more secure, knowing your. Never been so free, never been so free, caught in your love. Never been more secure, never been more secure, knowing that you give me joy down deep in my soul. Come on, soul, make raise the roof of this place. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. You give me joy down deep in my soul, down in my soul, down in my soul. You give me great joy down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul, down deep in my soul. You give me joy.
Church mother in they church hat clap. Man, that sugar gave her color purple coming back clap. When that whole week beat you up and stretch you, but you hear that organ playing and remind you of your blessings. And not another note, she just hit another note. Chills down my spine, got me crying, let me overload. You don't know about it, no. Old school church hymns, deacons get down and now the drum fit the verse. Can you hear me now? Church close where they don't care, you just get it now. Testify how we made martyrs out of these fathers and rose up all of his daughters to glorify your Father. That's why St. John's with a head church and be affirming, cause the church can be full of members, but empty in conversion. Preach the gospel, stay mad, look for change lives, not for hate class. Love people where they can staying at the church, just the church with the bird, gonna stay there.
All right. Woo! Soul League Saturday. Who's excited? Justin, are you excited?
Man, I am so excited.
Ooh, it was so awesome last night. Everything about it was amazing.
So fun.
You have helped to make it amazing already. Hey, how many of you just showed up this morning? Like you just got here. Where are you?
These
Stand.
people back
We
here.
want to welcome you. Stand where you are if you just got here this morning.
Someone give them a hug.
We love you. We are so, maybe there's somebody.
Someone high five them, give them a hug. Glad you guys are here.
We are so glad you're here. It's going to be an amazing day. We're literally going to make history today. The history of the world will change.
We should have them preach.
That's pretty much the way it happens.
They could do some preaching.
Y'all missed some amazing stuff last night. We haven't plugged the vacuum cleaner in yet, have we?
No, you said
Well,
wait.
but in just a moment, we're going to get crazy. But do y'all want to start your morning with a Little House moment? Can we do that? Let's just play our Little House moment, and then we'll be getting this thing plugged in and ready. I'll get the ping pong ball. Who doesn't love when Nellie gets her comeuppance? It's one of the great moments in Little House history. Now, if you were here last night, you know that we've got all kinds of zaniness in here. Justin's going to turn on this vacuum that is engineered for the toughest. Do we have, I think we've worked out our vacuum cleaner theme music because we're taking this to the extreme, aren't we? Let's do this. Cue the... Okay, can we back it up? Real loud. Turn it off,
We're living an extreme day.
Okay, we're playing putt-putt. I need two people who know how to putt. One person from this side, and this is extreme putt-putt. This is extreme putt-putt. You get up here, and I need someone from this side, someone from this side. You, yes, gray shirt. Come here. Come here. Yeah. This is called extreme putt-putt. I need the guy in the gray shirt, yeah, with the jacket. Come up here, come here. Okay, pause the music. Pause the music, and now we're gonna play the extreme music again when you guys head to the balcony. Here's what you're gonna do. Do I have two more? Right up there. Kevin, tell me your name and where you're from.
I'm Jacob. I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, Jacob from San Antonio. You see Kevin Hackett right there. That's your guy.
All right.
Okay, Kevin is going to take care of you. Yeah. You are going to have a putt-putt challenge, an extreme putt-putt challenge. What's your name?
Micah.
Micah from...
Okay, go ahead. Run up there.
Micah from Bama. So Micah, you're going up there to meet right there. Connor from Conroe Church. Go. They're going to take you to the... Y'all are in the balcony. You're putt-putting to the floor. We're going to put the hole right down here.
All right. Now, while they're doing this, I'm going to draw again. Okay?
Yeah, get another ping pong ball. Oh, this is so extreme. Oh,
Huge.
Extreme sing-along. All right. So, hey guys, hold up. Don't start. Hold on. All right, cut the music. Now, Leanne, we've got a sing-along video prepared. By the way, putt-putters, this is your homemade putt-putt destination right here. I'm putting it right here.
All right, the putters are ready. Putters are ready. Remember,
Hold on. Putters are going to begin when we start the sing-along.
Yeah.
So what we need is, we need everybody to stand. This side is going to start the song. This side starts the song. First verse and chorus. Second verse and chorus. Okay?
Y'all got to bring it
and
here.
we're judging.
This is a good one. This is a good song, too.
We're judging this, and this is the extreme sing-along. So putters, get ready. And actually, I guess we could leave the lights up like this. I was anticipating lights down, but let's leave the lights up. Cue the music. Not Extreme Days, but the sing-along. We finally got that theme music, though.
Extreme Days was amazing.
Raise your hand if you were alive during the Extreme Days Toby Mac.
3 people.
Remember how awesome that song, how cool that song was? I don't believe anybody had ever tried to loop a "We're living, we're living, we're living, we're living." Yeah, this is Leanne.
Leanne.
The sing-along, Leanne.
Sing along. Here we go. Lights down. Come on.
Hey, y'all are ready to start the putt-putt. Keep up with how many they hit.
They're good right here. Oh, wow.
Okay, right here, this is you.
Here we go, here we go.
Don't sing. Do not sing.
Good job.
Now, after this chorus, everybody's singing, and I'm listening for which side is going to blow me away.
They're gonna.
Okay, now everybody. Right now, this side is winning. This side is winning. Still this side. I see people not even singing.
That was great.
You know, honestly, this side made a push.
It did. It did.
This side made a push at the very end, but
This gentleman right here was
I think this side won the sing-along right here. But, hold on. Shh. But this side won the golf. This side won the golf challenge with 24 strokes. So,
That's awesome.
you know what? Unless you have to leave this afternoon, perhaps we'll finish this tonight and find out which side has bragging rights for a year. Okay, do we have anything else? I think that's it. I think we're done.
We're done. Yeah.
So I transition now?
Yeah, do it.
And yeah, let's do it. Yes, Josh Casey.
Yes! That was amazing.
Waiting. I wasn't sure if I was supposed installed. Hey, let's pray a prayer over today. God, in Jesus' name, thank you for the opportunity we have not just to be together, but to be together in a way that touches eternity. And we thank you for that. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
All right, guys. How many of you guys know this Psalm 34? Psalm 34? I love this song because it's a song straight out of Scripture. So if you haven't heard it before, I want you to listen along to the words of Scripture as we sing them. If you know it, just sing out at the top of your lungs. And I saw the Lord, and He answered me, and delivered me from every fear. Those who look on Him are radiant. They'll never be ashamed. They'll never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard me and saved me from my enemies. The Son of God surrounds His saints. He will deliver them. He will deliver them. So magnify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name together. Glorify the Lord with me. Come exalt His name forever. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Let the king of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord.
With one voice, you're never gonna let me down. Here we go.
You're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord.
Ladies, join me.
You are
When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. When the night is holding on to me, God is holding on. When the night
is holding on to me. God is holding on. When the night is holding on to me. God is holding. God is holding on. He is good. You are good, good, Lord. You are good, good, Lord. You are My God is awesome. He can move mountains. Keep me in the valley. Hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken. Strength where I've been weak. And forever He will reign. Sing that again. My God is awesome. He can move mountains. Keep me in the valley. Hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. Heals me when I'm broken. Strength where I've been weak. And forever He will reign. All right, so we can hear you. My God is awesome.
good to be here in the presence of God, amen? We're here again to call the Lord, invade this space as we worship and as we glorify and as we give him all the credit, because that's where all the credit is due, amen? You know, it makes me wonder, it makes me kind of ponder, what is it going to be like when we're all together, when all the saints gather around the throne, and we hear the angels cry, holy, 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 what the Lord God Almighty. I mean, that's going to be an amazing time to hear that repeated and repeated. We just don't have any idea. And that's why we're on mission in this ministry, United Voice Worship, is to continue to celebrate those differences, to work on those gaps, to help be intentional about what it means to be at the table with others. Because if you pay attention to the world today, you know we have some divided tables. And we've got to get back to those tables and have those conversations and be about the kingdom of God. This morning, I wanted to share this wonderful song. Many of you probably have heard this, but we're going to sing a song bilingual, and Cyril's going to lead this. And one of the things that we would continue to intentionally say, push yourselves. We're going to sing in 2 different languages. Is that okay this morning? And so this morning, let this scripture sort of put you in the frame of mind in Revelation 4:11, where it says, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased." God created you because you are loved. God created every color of skin. He created every human being. He created us from dust. He created every language and dialect. And it's a beautiful thing to know what he created. He is very well pleased of that creation. Let's give him glory. If this song, if you don't know these words, just listen to these words and let the Spirit of the Lord move through us this morning.
When I'm there with you in heaven, what a wondrous joy will be. Gather with the angels chorus, standing by the glassy sea. Such a thought is hard to fathom in the presence of my King, and with countless ones forgiven, gather round the throne to sing glory and honor. Worthy is the Lamb. Glory and honor. Worthy is the Lamb. Sing it in Spanish. Cuando esté allí contigo, día felice que será, junto al coro de los cielos, cerca del mar de cristal, cual pensar no sé si pueda, en la presencia de mi Dios, juntos santos redimidos, cantaremos a una voz. And honor, sing it. Worthy is the Lamb. Glory and honor. Worthy is who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who
Let's
I
stand together.
am. And I see many searching for answers, far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide. You know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Eres tú, güey, Padre. Si eres tú, si eres tú, si eres tú, soy amado por ti. Tal como soy, tal como soy, tal como soy. You're perfect. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Eres tú, güey, Padre. Si eres tú, si eres tú, si eres tú, soy amado por ti. Tal como soy, tal como soy, tal como soy. You're a good, good Father.
This is not a nursery rhyme. Because there's nothing cute about brokenness. Neglect, abuse, and hopelessness can blind us be where the focus is. Because we teeter on the wall. And they rise so high, these walls we build, made of promises made, yet never fulfilled, brick by brick, lie by lie. We feel we're safe over here because they're on the other side, but we teeter on the wall. Because this is not a nursery rhyme, because round frames were never meant for flat surfaces. Equilibrium's off by the hurt that is. Deny and move on is the advice we give, while the guilt engulfs the penitent. Sullied face, delirium, winds of change can't steady them. Moving too close to the edge again, we teeter on the wall. But this is not a nursery rhyme, because one false move and you find yourself falling past things silent that should have been said, falling past truths that never made it to the heart but stayed in the head, falling past cruel contentions maintained, sins that dog us yet still remain, mild and mammoth addictions sustained, weak-willed handed affections that can never contain, falling. You see, this is not a nursery rhyme because we're falling. Crash goes the souls we have, each crack a crevice of the pain that grabs our shells so brittle and frail. Gash marks etched across the epidermis. When will it end? We can't determine. Bleeding out on the base of these self-made walls. This is not a nursery rhyme. This is a call to action. This is the cry of the beloved kingdom. This is a deep wound moan for something better. This is the final realization of the one true matter. All the king's horses and all the king's men could never put this much damage together again. It takes the king himself to rise up off the throne and say, you may be broken, but you're never alone. You may be broken, but you're never alone. Can you hear him? Hear him say, in my hands are the pieces, in my heart is the cure, in my embrace alone are your parts secure. No, this is not a nursery rhyme.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, good morning. Put your hands together a little louder for Eric for the worship this morning. It's so good to be back with you. My name's Josh Ross. My wife and I live in Memphis. We lived in Memphis now for almost 11 years. For the last 8 years, we've lived in a under-resourced, underprivileged community. And there are times in my life, even as a minister, that I feel like I'm just in a season where I'm struggling to see what God is doing and what God wants of me. And I'll find myself in some seasons crying out to God, I'm struggling to see you clearly, like what it is you want, what your desires of me are for, where you want me to go. And it was a few years ago, I found myself, I took an hour on a Wednesday night before church. I just went into the worship center, and for 1 hour, this was my cry to God. God, I am struggling to see what you are doing and what you want of me. Can you make things more clear? God, what do you want of me? Where do you want me to go? Help me to see. And that night, after crying out to God, I went home after church about 8:30. This was January, February in Memphis. It was cold outside. I came home, drove into my driveway, was about to walk in the house, and my neighbor across the street, an older woman, an elderly woman, she came running out of her house, her arms in the air, she's screaming, she's yelling, and she's asking for help. So I was like, calm down, what do you need? I didn't know if she had been broken into, I didn't know if someone had been shot, I didn't know if someone had a heart attack. I was like, what do you need? She said, I need your help. I was like, okay, what do you need? She said, there's a mouse in my sink, and I need you to come help me. I don't do mice, all right? I'm like urban to the core. I'm a city boy. I don't do mice. So I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, let me make a phone call. And she's like, we don't have time for a phone call. You've got to help me. And then I remembered for an hour I've been crying out to God to help me to see more clearly. And it's amazing sometimes how God starts to work, right? And doors God may open. So I thought in my spirit, it's like, well, maybe this is maybe God wants me to help. So this is a woman who probably could have killed me with a flip-flop on the spot. But when it came to mice, she needed some help. So I said, all right, man, hang on. Let me think of a strategy. And she looked at me, and I'm not joking. She looked at me, and she said, boy, we ain't got time for no strategy. I need you to get in there and get my mouse. And I was like, okay, all right. So let me see what I'm dealing with, because I didn't know if we were talking about a mouse or if we were talking about a mouse. So I walked in, and I looked in the sink, and it was a little bitty mouse. More scared of me than I was scared of it. But still, I'm not going to reach in there with my hand and get the mouse and, like, go set it free. So I'm trying to think through, what do I do? So I started thinking through my options, and don't judge me as I started thinking through my options, because option number one was just flush it down the garbage disposal and take care of this problem quick, all right? Option number two was let me go get a mouse trap, put it in the sink, wait until I hear a snap, and then the problem be taken care of. And option number three was try to somehow cradle this mouse, go outside, and set it free. Now, you may be judging me, but let me just see. How many of you would have flushed it down the garbage disposal? Just a show of hands. All right, the problem was the garbage disposal was on the other side of the sink, so I couldn't do that. How many of you would have set the mouse trap and just waited for that thing to bite some cheeks? Some of you. How many of you would have tried to set the mouse free? Did we got some? Oh my goodness, way too many good-hearted people in this room. That's the option I chose. I was like, let me try to set it free. So here's what I did. I got an oven mitt out of the sink after grandma, daughter, and granddaughter went in the back room and closed the door. So I'm there, and I got an oven mitt, and I scooped that mouse, and it started running up my arm. There was this scream that came out of me that I didn't even know was inside of me. It scared me. And it freaked them out in the back. They're like, what happened? Are you okay? He said, look to the house. And I'm like, no, I got it. So I got another oven mitt, cupped it, Took off running to the front door and then realized I can't open the door. So Grandma had to come open the door. I went and I set the mouse free. And for weeks and weeks, every time this family saw me, I was the hero of the neighborhood. Our relationship changed. And it's really amazing. Like sometimes I wonder, like, God, when I cry out to you to help me to see more clearly, sometimes I wonder if you laugh and you send things like a mouse in a sink to help open me up to the things you're doing in the world. There are times I struggle to see. Yet my entire life I've had great vision. Since I went from 3rd grade until last year without going to an eye doctor. I had good vision. I've never had glasses. I read a lot. But last summer I just started struggling. I would be reading books and I would just find myself having to like shake my head because it was all getting fuzzy. And I was like, well, maybe I need to go to an eye doctor. So I did. I went to an eye doctor and they started doing all the tests. And it's been a long time since I've done the test. You know, you cover up an eye and you read off a chart, cover up the other eye, they shine a light in your eyes. And then she said, put your forehead up to this machine right here, and this is where the air poofs into your eye. The poofy air machine. That's the scientific name for it, poofy air machine. And I sat there thinking, since I was in the 3rd grade, you mean to tell me of all the advancement we've made in science and medicine, you have not developed a better machine that can gauge the health of your eye and the strength of your eye than blowing the air in the eye. Few things scare me more than putting my forehead, waiting for that little poof to come to the eye. So I did. I ended up having to get some reading glasses so I could see a little more clearly. And I wonder where you are right now in your life. How are you able to see? And I'm not just talking about your vision or your 2020, but the eyes of your heart and how much time do we spend trying to see who God is, what it is God wants, and who Jesus is. There's a store, and maybe some of you have been there. Can we show this image? Any fans of Build-A-Bear in the house? There are a lot of grandparents who are like having to push off retirement like 2 to 3 more years because of Build-A-Bear. My mom's put thousands of dollars into Build-A-Bear for all her grandbabies. And if you've been to Build-A-Bear, or maybe you just know something about Build-A-Bear, when you go in, you're in complete control of what that bear is going to look like, or whatever stuffed animal you choose. To use Build-A-Bear language, you get to create something with just the right amount of huggability and fluffability. You can dress it however you want it to dress it in. You can put Houston Rocket gear on that thing. You can dress it up however you want. And not only that, at Build-A-Bear, you can put a sound bite inside of it and give it something to say to you every day, to where it will greet you in the morning and speak beautiful things over you if you want that to happen. You get to create a bear any way you want, and if we're not careful in life when it comes to faith, and if we're not careful in life when it comes to the church, it's like we go through a build a Jesus, creating Jesus however we want Jesus to be in our lives, and totally missing out on who Jesus wants us to see him for all that he is. Does this make sense? Let me show you a few people, and I know a lot of you here, when you watch TV, you probably don't watch commercials much anymore, but I bet there are a few faces that some of you may know. Who's this? Flo, all right? So Flo is words for progressive, right? So you see Flo, you see her face up on billboards. Do you know who the next one is? Right? Accident guy, right? With some of the funniest commercials you've ever seen. Pull them up on YouTube. His name's plastered on billboards or taxis that have his face on them. The next one, some of you here in Houston, y'all know this? Chris Paul, and who's Chris's twin in this commercial? Cliff, right? So Chris is a player for the Houston Rockets. He serves up assists in basketball, and Cliff is an insurance agent who serves up assists in the insurance world. And one more image if we go to this one. Anybody? Right? Jake from State Farm. Right? Khakis in the red shirt. You gotta love it. Now, here's the deal with insurance agents. Like, there are a lot of commercials in the world, but these are some of the most memorable commercials that are out there. And what insurance agents promise you, and what the message that they want you to hear, a couple of things. One, they want to provide the lowest prices, but two, they want you to know that they are there if anything bad happens in your life. You get in a car wreck, your home gets broken into, something happens to you, you call your insurance agent 24 hours a day, and they will be there to help you. My insurance agent's Chuck Petrie. When I've been in car wrecks, when our house has been broken into, we can call Chuck anytime, and Chuck is there to take our call, to let us know what to do. When it comes to Jesus, a lot of us, we think of Jesus primarily as an insurance agent. That we want to be just close enough to Jesus That when bad things happen in life, or we stumble and we fall, that we can call upon Jesus and he'll be there to help heal whatever has been broken. So we want to be just close enough to him that if something bad happens, if something bad goes down, that we're close enough to make the call to heaven, and then Jesus is going to help us. And Jesus wants you to know he wants to be so much more for you than just an insurance agent. He wants to be so much more than the get out of hell free card, so much more than a safety net that just catches you in the end. He wants to be so much more than that. Jesus wants to be companion, healer, friend. So many things Jesus wants to be for us. He's so much more than just that. So here are 3 questions I want to lay in front of you, and this is the first one. Who is Jesus in your life? If someone were to ask you today, who is Jesus for you? How would you answer that? What are the words that come to mind? What are the sentences? How would you express it? How would you articulate it? Who is Jesus? And the second question is this. How do you think about what it means to be lost? Like, what does it mean to be lost? I don't know what you lose more in your life. If you lose your shoes and you can't find them, if you lose maybe your keys, a wallet, maybe you think you lose your mind occasionally, maybe you drive and you feel like you get lost, so it's a lot easier now with cell phones that have apps on them. What does it mean to be lost? All right, and this is an important one today because we're diving into Luke 15 where there are 3 different stories, and I just want to go through all 3 of these real quick. Here's the first story in Luke 15 that Jesus tells, and this is right after he sets it up. If you remember last night, he sets up Luke 15, 1 and 2, is that Jesus begins telling these stories, and how this whole story begins is that there are some people who are leaning in, trying to listen to what it is Jesus had to say, and then there are other people who are grumbling, like they don't want to take Jesus for who he is. So I'm hoping and praying that we are leaning in today to know Jesus just a little better. So here are the 3 stories Jesus tells. The first one in Luke 15, 3 and 4 says this. Jesus told them this parable. So suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? So the first story is about a lost sheep, which is a story Jesus would tell that would connect with a lot of men in the first century culture. Men who maybe they aren't shepherds, but they would get it. So one sheep goes away. And you have a shepherd who thinks, I'm not just going to stay with the 99, I've got to go find the one that's lost. The second story is this. It's a woman who loses a coin. And she's in her house, and or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and she loses one of them. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? So this is a story that Jesus told that would have connected probably with a lot of women in the first century culture, which in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus does this multiple times where there are 2 stories side by side where one is connecting with one audience, either a male audience or maybe a Jewish audience, and another one's connecting with another audience, maybe a woman audience, a female audience, or a Gentile audience. And then you get to the third story, which is one that most of us know. There are non-Christians around the world who do not know anything in the Bible, but they've heard this story. Because artists have painted about the prodigal son. In fact, I have a dictionary app, and every day it sends me one word, like one word that you can know every day. This morning, the word they sent me was prodigal, which is of all words a dictionary could send. This is a story about the prodigal son. And here are just a few verses of this story. Jesus continued. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. And not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs, and he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. All right, here's a guy who had everything he needed, and now he ends up like he's surrounded by pigs, smelling pigs, eating things from pigs, seeing pigs. And here's how I want you to think about these 3 stories. I want this right here to stick with you if you go to this next image. One way to think about Luke 15 is like this. That the first story Jesus tells is about a sheep that is lost. And you have something that is lost outside of the house. The second story Jesus tells in Luke 15 is a story about a woman who's inside of a house and she loses a coin. It's a story about something that is lost inside of a house. And the third story is a story about a man who has 2 sons. And of those 2 sons, there's one son who is lost outside of the house, who becomes what we know as the prodigal son. But then we're going to read later on today, there's another son, and he is lost inside of the house. Because when it comes to being lost and how you think about lost, yes, for the word lost in the Bible, it is about eternal significance and eternal destiny. And lost from God may mean that salvation has not come to someone yet and they have not entered into all it is God wants for them. But another way to also think about lost that lines up with what the Bible is it's possible for us to lose our way. I walk with people in my church and in my city almost every single day. People who've lost their way. People who've lost passion for the gospel, and some of them don't know why. People who've neglected to live out what it is Jesus intends for us. So it is possible to be lost outside of the house of God and to be lost inside of it where we lose our way. I had a woman call me a few years ago. I'd never met her before. She was 24 years old. And she called me and she said, Josh, I need to come and meet with you. I need to share what God's done in my life over the last month. And I'm interested in giving my life to Jesus. She came in, she sat in my office. I met her for the first time. And she shared with me that on February 14th, just a few years ago, she had been living with a boyfriend. She had not grown up in the church, didn't know anything about Jesus. She had been living with a boyfriend. Boyfriend broke up with her on Valentine's Day, February 14th. So she ends up going out with a friend. Her friends got her outside of the house. They went to one bar. She ends up having a little too much to drink. They went to another bar. She had more to drink. And then she got behind a wheel. She was driving her own car. She was emotional. And she had had way too much to drink. She got out on the interstate in Memphis. Somehow entered an ongoing ramp the wrong way. And for 4 miles drove on the interstate in Memphis, Tennessee, going in the opposite direction, cars dodging her, and all she remembers is that somehow she hit a barrier going 70 miles per hour. I've seen pictures of her car. I don't know how she survived. She went into the hospital, where for a month she had surgery after surgery after surgery. And she said a couple of weeks in, she started having dreams. And this is a woman who didn't grow up in the church, a woman who doesn't know or didn't know the story of God. And she started having dreams about Jesus. So then in the hospital room, a couple of weeks in, she looked over and there was a Bible in that hospital room. And she starts flipping through the Bible and then she starts reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And she was just so intrigued by Jesus that when she got out of the hospital, she ends up calling me to come and share that she's been having dreams about Jesus encountering her. She had picked up a Bible and she started to read. And now she comes to meeting with me saying, is it true that Jesus can forgive me for all the things I've done? Is it true? So the next Sunday, we ended up entering into the waters of baptism as I got to baptize this girl. A woman who, for years of her life, had not been living a life that lined up with who God is. She was lost outside of the house. And so at some point, all of us have been there. And some of you may be there right now. You've totally lost your way, living a life fully disconnected from God. But some of you are going to church every week. You're going to youth group every week. And you're in the house of God. You've made decisions to confess Jesus as the Lord of your life. You've been baptized into Christ, but you have lost your way. You've forgotten what it means or neglected what it means to live out the gospel. I was there when I was 16 years old, where I had about 2 to 3 months where I was still going to church, attending youth group, but I completely lost my way. I got caught up in some very intentional sin at the end of my sophomore year and began living a lot of my life just for myself and pleasure. And for 2 to 3 months, I was living this way. And then my sister, who passed away 9 years ago yesterday, one of the closest people I've ever had in my life, she came into my room. She came home from college, came into my room one day, and she just starts asking me about my faith in God, my prayer life, and then she starts asking like point-blank questions about sin and sin in my life. So I start confessing stuff to my sister. She's 3 years older than me. And then Jenny says, hey, here's what we need to do. Tonight, we need to sit down with Mom and Dad, and we need to confess some of our sins. And I looked at her and I was like, Jenny, 16-year-olds don't confess sins to Mommy and Daddy. That's not what we do. I was like, I'll be there for you as a 19-year-old to support you as you confess your sins to Mom and Dad. I'm fully supportive of you doing that, but that's not what I didn't confess this stuff to you for you to try to convince me to go confess to Mom and Dad. But she talked me into it. So we sat down with my mom and my dad that night. And Jenny went first. And when Jenny was done, my mom was already a basket case. And then it was my turn. And Jenny looks at me and she's like, it's your turn. So I start sharing a few things that I've been struggling with and dealing with. I'll never forget it. My mom jumped up And she left the room, and I thought she ran out of the room because she was so disappointed she couldn't be around us anymore. But my mom went to the back room, and it was like 15 seconds, which if you're in a moment like that, 15 seconds can feel like eternity, right? She came back in after 15 seconds, and my mom had her Bible open to the Psalms. And she started praying Psalms over my sister and I. I'll never forget it. Psalm 63, Psalm 103, Psalm 51. Psalms about God's forgiveness and God's love and God's mercy. And I feel like it was the first time in my life I could like open up my hands and receive the grace of God. And I knew in that moment, I didn't know if I would become a preacher one day or a minister or a speaker or what it was. I just knew if there is a God who sent Jesus, who has the power and willingness to forgive us for anything we have done, I want to serve this God with everything I have for the rest of my life, no matter what I become one day. Some of you are lost outside of the house, and some of you are lost inside of the house. And it's possible for us to get caught up in like dark clouds sometimes, where we're not able to see the light. I mean, most of you live like in Houston or somewhere around here. Has it been hard for some of you the last few days with this fog that's like hovering over? You can't really see the sun. Do any of you suffer from seasonal affective disorder? Like you can't see the sun in the wintertime and you go into a funk, you know? So a few years ago, I was preaching a sermon on Jesus being the light of the world, and I came across this research that there are places above the Arctic Circle, so way up in like northern Alaska and Canada and Russia, who go 65 days every winter without seeing the sun. Can you imagine that? Like some of you go 3 to 7 days without seeing the sun in the wintertime and you freak out. Can you imagine going 65 to 75 days in the wintertime without seeing the sun? So I started doing this research, and what I found was so intriguing is that the research shows there's a peak season in a lot of these places for depression and for suicide. But the peak season is not in the 65 to 70 days of darkness. The peak season in some of these towns for depression and suicide attempts is not in the season of darkness. It is when the light comes back. Because the challenge for a lot of these people is what it means to re-enter into the light. Which is what some of you have had to do in your life, and some of you are in the process right now. You're in a fog because of intentional sin, because of grief, pain, brokenness. You're in a place of darkness, and you're trying to enter back into the light. I'm not talking about like losing salvation and needing back in. I'm just talking about going through a time in your life, either now or one day you will, when you're going to lose your way and lose focus of what life is all about. And God's calling us back into the light. So a few years ago, I was finishing a book that I wrote, and I traveled up to Barrow, Alaska for a few days. I just want to show you a few pictures of what this trip was like. This is the northernmost town in the United States of America, where it's hard to see it right there, but when I showed up in Barrow, this is northernmost town. So I was at, like, the United States of America cannot go further north than Alaska than where I was. And right there is negative 20 degrees when I first arrived, which up until this point in my life, I've never experienced weather below zero. I don't know if you can see this. Negative 31 with the wind chill, negative 55. There was one day my eyebrows froze to my toboggan. So the worst pain I've ever had. This was me. And here's the thing. That right there was at 10 o'clock in the morning. Because the people of Barrow, for 65 days, they do not see the sun. 65 days, from November 18th to around January 23rd, they do not see the sun. That's 10 o'clock in the morning. Here's me, and I'm standing, and if you're at the northernmost point of the U.S., which is usually there's a sign right there behind me, if you're at that place, you can take a selfie. It does no shame in your game. You just better do it quick before frostbite sets in. If you go to the next slide. This was me. I went to a grocery store. It's a town of 5,000 people. Grocery store's really expensive there. So I went and I got me some turkey and breads and Doritos and Pringles, little Twix and whatchamacallit. And that right there came out to $80. Couldn't believe it. When I checked out, the woman looked at me and she said, "You're here traveling alone, sir. You don't have your wife with you." I was like, "Yeah, that's right, you know, Doritos and Pringles, that's what I need." It's a whaling community. So they're able to kill whales and feed the entire community. It's a big festival. That right there, that sign in the middle is about a 6-foot sign. And that's a jawbone of a whale. I just thought that was cool. If you go to the next picture, these were in every building you went throughout all of Barrow. There were signs of polar bears, because there are only like 2 or 3 animals that live up in Barrow. Polar bears are one of them. And it's like what polar bears are like in the fall, winter, spring, and then over to the right, so this stuff about like if you are close to a bear, here's how you need to try to get away. And then in the bottom right corner, it's if a bear attacks you, it's like one bullet point, defend yourself. In other words, you're probably not going to make it, so try to get one really good punch in. And so when I went to Barrow, I traveled, I took a videographer with me, and we traveled around. We got so many testimonies. My whole thing was this. I thought, if here's a community that goes through 65 days of darkness every year, maybe they have something to teach the youth around Houston and churches everywhere of what it means for us to navigate darkness too. So I went to just listen to testimonies in this community. The one that stuck out to me the most is I was meeting with the counselor at the local high school. And this is a guy that travels around kind of the northern slopes, so he does a lot of counseling and therapy with people, especially in the wintertime. And I shared with him why I was there and the research I come across. I was asking him, like, does this research line up with, like, and he was in agreement. And then he looked at me and he said, man, what you're saying right now makes so much sense. And this counselor looked at me and he said, Josh, I often find myself getting depressed when the sun comes back. And he says, the reason why is this, that every winter after you've been through a cold, harsh, blistering cold winter, you anticipate that when the sun returns, when the light returns, it will bring immediate change. He said, but it's not what happens. He says the sun returns, the light is there, and you celebrate, but then the elements all around you often get worse. It gets colder. Ice and snow keeps falling. And they're really connected with me, because I'm like, some of you right now, you're trying to navigate some darkness in your life, whether it's sin or grief or brokenness, relational dysfunction, trying to navigate just a fog that you may be in. And sometimes we think when the light comes, when the sun comes, it'll bring immediate change. Yet often the elements that have held us down in the past are still there in the future, pull us down in the future. It's a matter of us trying to find a place with God that we can navigate it better. I have a friend in Memphis. He was an undercover cop for a number of years. He took me on a ride one night. He just wanted to show me the good, the bad, and the ugly of Memphis. He took me to a Crown Plaza hotel where they had a guy who at the age of 16 stole his first car. It was like a drug. He became a notorious criminal. He's been in and out of prison for 16 years. When I met him, he was 32 years old, and for 16 years he'd been in and out of the penitentiary. And the cops were holding a few charges over this guy at the time because this guy was helping us solve cases for them. The guy was helping us solve murder cases. Cases where Walgreens and CVS pharmacies were being hit and pills were being stolen. So we went, we hung out with this guy, and we had to take my truck because the cop was off duty that night. So we were driving my 1995 Ford Ranger, a truck my dad bought, and then I bought it for my dad when I went to college. So we're driving my truck. My truck was old. It was about 20 years at the time, 20 years old. So we're driving around, we're hanging out with this guy named James. And James has been a car theft for 16 years. So I said, James, we're going to be driving around a lot of places in Memphis. I'm just curious, man, is my truck going to be safe? And James looked at my truck and he looked at me, and he looked at my truck and he looked at me and he said, Pastor Josh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, man, but ain't nobody going to touch your truck in Memphis tonight. He's like, you can leave this thing unlocked and nobody's going to touch this truck. Now you leave your wallet in the seat. They may get your wallet, but they're not going to touch your truck. And I listened to James tell these stories for 16 years, going in and out of jail. And then I said, James, I got one question that I need to ask you. I said, why would somebody, because at the time I had heard that like 66% of inmates in the jail in Memphis, it's at least their sixth time to be in there. I said, James, why would people be set free from prison only to make choices that will send them right back in? And he waited about a minute. And he looked up and he said, Josh, I guess when it comes down to it, me and some of my friends do not know what it's like to be free. And I looked at James and I said, James, I think I preach in front of people every single Sunday who would say the same thing. That they want to be free. But there's so many things holding them down. It's like some people don't know if freedom's even an option. And sometimes people are held down by the shame and guilt of things they've done, and because Jesus set you free from sin and wants to save you, and the enemy wants to plant these lies in you that, yeah, God will save you, but he reluctantly saves you. And some of the best news for you tonight, right there where you are, or this morning, some of the best news for you is that John 3:16 is not that for God so tolerated the world, or for God just reluctantly saved people, or that when it came to saving you, that God held a council in heaven and they voted whether they think you should be saved or not. It's that for God so loved the world that he didn't just reluctantly save you, and God doesn't waste salvations. God doesn't save people and then look at him and think, we're going to save this one, but we're not going to use this one. Whatever it is God saves, God wants to use for his kingdom and for his glory, which is all of you in this room. You are prime candidates for salvation and prime candidates to live what it means to be free so that we set the world free. So let's stand up. We're about to sing a song before you go on to your classes. And as we stand up, I just want you to look at your neighbor and I want you to say, God is for you.
Let's sing together, church. For I spoke the word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took the breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt the word, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Sing it out. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Come on, church, sing it out now. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Give it up for the worship team and Josh Ross. Man. All right, so really quickly, here's what is hard. We leave these spaces and we maybe don't receive what we just heard because we just do life so quickly. You guys understand what I'm saying? So really quickly, think about what's the nugget of truth that you receive that you're going to walk away out of these doors with. Real quick, think of it right now. I'll share with one of mine. One is that you might be inside the house or outside the house, but you might be lost either way. Like, man, it's like doing things for God and doing things with God are two different things. You understand? That was my takeaway. Thankful for Josh reminding me of that. Doing things with God and for God are two different things. Share with your neighbor real quickly, if you feel comfortable, what's your takeaway, what's your nugget that you're leaving with this moment with. Ready, go. Share real quickly. There's power in sharing here. Lots of power. Yeah, this is beautiful right here.
All right.
I wish we could hear what they
I
have
do
to say.
too. We squeeze so much amazing into this one day that it does this. There's no way for it not to feel like we're running and gunning and moving because there's so much here. But I hope that you will let that sit with you, that thing. I was just telling Justin, listening to Josh, this is the second time I've heard Josh tell the story of his week and a half in Barrow. And I've thought a lot about Barrow. And the sun means so much to me. I'm talking about the S-U-N, the rays of the sun. When it is gray for a week, it's hard on me. I can't imagine being, night for a month or two. And I don't know exactly, I'm not trying to over-spiritualize that, but I don't want to run from it either. So what it is for you, I don't know. Boy, we just hope that as you walk and as you move and in between and as you eat and as you sit and as you have fun, that you let these things that God is seasoning your life with do their thing for you. As you go through your day, when and if you get a chance to let the world or your family back home know what you're doing, hashtag this thing, SoulLink19. We've got a few pictures that will scroll on here. These are a few things
Oh,
from
that
last
guy.
night and from this morning.
That guy.
If this is somebody from your
There's
group,
the
just
crew.
give them a nudge as you see them on the screen.
Oh.
If you missed the video from yesterday, it really was bananas.
Only 8 views.
Thank you for that. We don't have time to spend time on each one.
Yes.
Just kind of roll through them. That was our selfie from down
Those
here.
girls. There you are.
Yep, there's the post-it note.
Hey.
Where are you? Where are you? Tell us where you are. Who are you? Hey! I saw this one on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah. I think both of our golfers were in pictures. Both of our golfers?
This is fun.
I like this one. And that's probably, is that the best beard here? I don't know, we've had several good beards. That is a serious beard. The answer is yes. That guy does know the way.
Man, that guy's
Where are you?
tough. This is fun. Okay, so we should
Where's
probably tell
somebody
them where
gonna
they're
get it?
going now.
Yeah, so we're transitioning. Look at your wristband. You're going to see either red or white. If you've got red, listen carefully. If you've got red, you're going out here into the lobby, taking an immediate left, walking down this hallway, and then around toward the youth center, the teen center, okay? That's if you've got a red wristband. If you've got a white wristband, then you've got different instructions, which I will tell you in just a moment. So red, we're asking all red wristbands up, out into the lobby, and left. White, stay where you are. Stay where you are, white. And actually, white, you can wave goodbye. You can just wave goodbye. Tell red you love them. Let them know how you feel about them. Tell red, hey, white, let's sing to them. Let's sing to red as they leave. We love you with the love of the Lord. We love you with the love of the Lord. We see in you the glory of our King, and we love you with the love of we ready for this? What's the sevenfold amen? What song has the sevenfold amen? The Lord bless you and keep. Dan, cut the music.
Now the Son of God plays music
The
over you.
Lord
This is great.
lift his countenance upon you and give you peace and give you peace and give you peace. The Lord. I started it too high. I started it way too high. Let's start over. White. Let's start over.
No.
The Lord bless you. Red, slow down, Red.
No.
You.
Speed up, Red.
The Lord lift his countenance
Faster, Red.
upon. Come on. And give you peace.
Sing.
Give you peace. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. And be gracious unto you. Be gracious. Red, can you hear us? Gracious unto you.
They're gone. They're gone.
Amen. Okay. Yes. Justin. Did we just start a tradition at Soul Link? I think we did. I think we just started a tradition.
No.
Justin so wanted to sing an old school a cappella hymn.
I did.
Everything we're doing, no matter what you, huh?
No.
Okay, white. Do you know where white's going? Well, first of all, there's two whites. There's white without a sticker and white with a sticker.
Yeah, explain
White
that.
without a sticker
Listen to this.
goes into the lobby and then goes that way, okay? Actually, I think you may go out the front doors.
Front doors.
All the way out the front doors, take a left, and you're going to the ministry building.
Correct.
White with the sticker, go out these doors through the gymnasium where there is a prayer experience, okay?
Yes.
Got it? White without a sticker outside and that way to the ministry building. White with a sticker right through there, through the gym. And Justin and I will sing an a cappella song as you leave. All right? You are dismissed. Go. Sing his praises, sing his praises, sing his praises,
No, you're
sing
speaking
his
so too
praises.
fast.
Now that I'm well on my way.
Hey, that's how it goes.
The way.
All right, well, have a great day, Soul Link. Day 2. Who's excited?
7 of those people.
Yeah, there.
This
that
guy.
That guy. That one. Remember, #SoulLink19.
Soul